So what is marriage? The first instance of marriage is in Genesis 2. We can see here that God did some kind of surgery to Adam after putting him in a deep slumber, and the fruits of that event created a woman for him, who God brought to him, and the moment Adam set eyes on this woman, he declared in front of God, "Flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone," and named her woman because he came out of man. Then the classic, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh," is in the scriptures. So, from this we can understand that it's innate in man, even in woman, that once met with a suitable partner, there is an infatuation that leads to a marriage. And that once a wife is found, then the man will leave what has made them, mother and father is what has made you, and in Adam's instance, what has made him has been the garden, his responsibilities, God, and so he's leaving that understanding, and he is becoming a new thing with this woman. So all that Adam had known about the world was changed as he now forego his nomenclature and now became joined with Eve. Man and woman now are man together. Adam is now totally changed forever. He is no longer all man, but shares this role with another. And this sharing of title and substance, this marriage, openness, mercy, as Adam could have rejected Eve for their differences, actually creates life. So marriage is a bond making one strong thing out of two, which then creates life. It's a universal powerhouse and reflects the nature of God. As earlier in the scriptures, God declares to make man in their own image. That means that God is a plurality, and together they created life, which was man. So when the son is born in this holy marriage, matrimony, when a son is born, it is created also in being the same as the mother and father, and yet with its own differences. It's an amalgam, it's loved, and now this unit of two, which was one, is now made of three, and it's become stronger, fiercer, and even more life has been generated. So marriage inevitably leads to more life, which brings us back to the topic of why we get married. Because we want more life. Because it's accepting life. And who's the source of all life if not God himself? So it's an acceptance of God, essentially. Could God have made another woman from the rib of the first son? Maybe. He could have. If there was no fall and all that, that could have been something that happened, like how women were made, and they would then be the perfect woman for you because they're literally made from your own bone. And that could have been God's original plan. I don't see why not. But then again, the son being born and kind of like a symbol of Christ coming into the world. So anyway, my experience with girlfriends and how my heart was easily so heavily broken, I believe is because each woman that I met I really wished to marry since meeting them for the first time. My conclusion, because that's really the way God had designed it, my conclusion is that the girlfriend-boyfriend relationship is unnatural and modern, even diabolical, as the true design is openness and dedication, and this is the choice of life. Thinking, I'm going to fool around with this person for a bit and make no real dedication to them in this kind of boyfriend-girlfriend dynamic is like super gross. It's not really, it's a perversion of how God designed the sexual act and the union of man and woman. So the marriage is then a gift from God, because we're still discussing what is marriage, and he will send you a wife as a gift. So we've seen that Eve was a gift given to Adam, and that gift was a wife, so it just follows. So marriage is then a declaration, and there's also other scripture that support that. Marriage is then a declaration in front of God. It says something like a prudent wife is a gift from God, something like that. So marriage is then a declaration in front of God of your new life with this woman. How you are leaving the old behind and traveling into the new. Divorcing your father and mother and accepting life and the strength and power of God in a whole new way by cleaving to your wife. So my final point about what is marriage is about how it is done today, even in ancient times, and that's the point. There is a process. Considering in the garden there was no paperwork, no nothing, it was all open and innocent and before the Lord. However, we are now and have been in a very different times, and a true marriage adapts to the times. Once it was only necessary to declare marriage in front of the elders in the city, throw your sandal at a goat or something, and then you're done. Not to trivialize ancient marital rights, I'm just unfamiliar. But what marriage is nowadays is a lot different. And I would just like to point out that, even divorce was created later, because of how wicked we are. Like, God gave us a procedure of divorce, so marriage does change literally in line with our wickedness in a way. Anyway, so what marriage is nowadays is that you have to bring all the right paperwork, and now you have to procure a document, a license, and a certificate. And once procured through the relevant authorities, then this marriage will be recognized in every court in the entire world. And now, this is what it takes in order to be properly married. And this is important to be properly married because God gives authority to all the courts, governments, and police. And so, once recognized by them that you're in a marriage, it's God's authority essentially recognizing your marriage. And so, you really have entered that institution. And so, you really have, if you want a God-authoritated marriage and not an illegal one, a fake one or a license to fornicate, then one goes through this procedure. A lot of people say, oh, well, we're married in the eyes of God. And it's like, God gives authority to all the courts. And in their eyes, you're illegally not properly married. So why do you think God is like, oh yes, you must be married? And he's not blind. He sees literally everything. And it's like, even if your hearts are in the right place, you don't think God can make a way for you to just do it properly? Anyway. Well, that does come to the next point. So it's telling, because what obstacles may come in the way for getting married, if they are insurpassable, then it is, even if it's just getting a few pennies that you need, that you just can't seem to get, no matter what you do, unless you start robbing or something. Or a piece of paperwork or whatever, or a visa or whatever. If these obstacles are insurpassable, then it is God himself that is resisting this marriage, and it's for your own good. So if you do this illegal marriage, and you don't really seek out the proper marriage, and it's likely for the best, but it's not a proper marriage, so don't pretend that it is. And anyway, if there are obstacles and one miraculously overcomes them, being in the will of God, it will be so clear and obvious that God is delighted with you and what you're doing and the partnership that you're creating, and is welcoming and clearing the way for you to enter his holy institution. So those are my thoughts on what is marriage. It's a God-made, God-given institution. It makes you a stronger unit. It's a divorcing from an older life into a newer life, which then creates life. And so it can be quite scary, I suppose. And it really needs to be done properly if you want to have that thing. Anything else except for a proper marriage is just a lie. And but there is a point that God may be keeping you from marriage, which is a good thing, because he knows that it won't be good for you. It will be destructive to it. And so actually keeping you out of marriage will be more constructive and more edifying to your being. However, that's no reason to not still wish for the good things in your life. We are told actually to not, if you're unmarried, to not seek to be married. However, marriage isn't a sin at the same time. So that's another video. Bye-bye.